Today marks Black Women's Equal Pay Day, a day that highlights the continuing wage gap faced by Black women in the workforce. Advocates say, on average, Black women earn about 65 cents for every dollar paid to white, non-Hispanic men, but the work continues to close the gap.
Joining us live this morning is Jocelyn Fry, the president of the National Partnership with Women and Families, to talk about the pay gap, what's driving it, and really what can be done to close it. Jocelyn, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Great to be here with both of you.
It's Black Women's Equal Pay Day, as we've mentioned, but really what does this day represent, and why is it still such an important benchmark in 2026?
Well, I think the best way for people to think about it is that Black Women's Equal Pay Day is the date, how long Black women have to work into 2026 to make the same as white men who worked just 2025. In other words, Black women, because they have a pay gap of approximately 65 cents to every dollar that white men are earning, have to work longer into the next year to make the equivalent of what their white male counterparts were making the previous year. And that's just a lot of work for less money, and nobody wants that.
So you talked about that 65 cents and the difference here. What's driving the gap, and why is it so difficult to close that gap?
Yeah, when you look at the pay gap, and Black women experience a pay gap, but really all women experience a pay gap. And there are really three things that are driving the pay gap. The first is the fact that women tend to work in jobs that pay less. If you think about Black women, they are nursing assistants, they're home health aides, they're childcare workers. Many of those jobs that are predominantly performed by women and disproportionately by Black women have historically been paid less because they're performed by women. So that's one thing. Many people call that occupational segregation. The other is the fact that women are more likely to be caregivers. So they're in and out of the workforce more frequently. They're taking care of parents or sick children. They're the ones who drop out when a care needs arise. And we know that every family experiences care needs at some point. And the third reason is simply discrimination. That unfortunately, Black women's work is often devalued. People think that they are less valuable as workers, and so they pay them less. And it's really the combination of those factors that's driving the wage gap.
All right, there's some concern about efforts to scale back workforce demographic data, including EEO1 reporting. Why is that data so important, and what could happen if employers really have less information to track some of those pay disparities?
Yeah, the EEO1 form, and I'm so glad you mentioned it, is a tool that has been used for decades to really track workforce demographics, as you said, or the breakdown by race and gender, the composition of a workforce. And really that type of data can help elevate and bring visibility to where there are disparities occurring in the workforce. And during the Obama administration, they actually passed a rule to also collect pay data. So you could track to what extent there were disparities by race and gender to really figure out and surface where those disparities are occurring, and at least give you some indication of where to look. And when you get rid of that data, you simply have less visibility. It's not rocket science. You can't prove discrimination if you have no data to back it up. So collecting that data is really critical.
All right, so here we are. We've given the background, talked about the 65 cents. How do you fix it going forward?
Yeah, I think that there are things that employers can do, there are things that workers can do themselves, and communities can do. Employers can look in their own workforces. They can do their own assessment around compensation to see who's getting paid, to see if there are differences. Sometimes differences arise simply because people aren't paying attention. So it's important for employers to collect data. It's also important for workers themselves to be aware of pay practices in their own workplaces, to make sure that they have a sense of what other people are earning, to be their own best advocate. And then I think in communities, we can pass laws to address some of these issues. There are things that help to make sure that people can take time off for caregiving and not lose their jobs. We're fortunate in DC to have paid leave, so people can do that. There are things we can do to step up enforcement of civil rights laws and not pull back. This administration administration has pulled back. There are things we can do to expand opportunities so that women are not stuck in jobs that historically are paying them less. We can do all of those things to improve wages, not only for Black women, but for all workers.
All right. Jocelyn Fry, president of the National Partnership for Women and Families, thank you so much for taking the time with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Joe, over to you.